King S guard presses emergency buzzer 3 times for this. Horse guards, royal guard, king's guard. The stones of the parade ground still held a little coolness from the night. Tourists started to arrive early, cameras ready, voices low at first, as if the place itself asked for respect. The king's guard stood in position, tall and still, dressed in perfect uniform. From a distance they looked like statues. From up close they were living walls of discipline. One guard stood near the edge of the parade beside a large, well-trained horse. The horse was strong and proud, its coat clean and shining. The guard's posture was straight, his face calm, his eyes fixed forward. He had trained for years to stand this way. He knew how to ignore noise, laughter, and even insults. He knew how to stay focused while the world moved around him. People gathered in small groups. Some whispered facts they had learned from videos. Others joked quietly. Children tugged at their parents' hands, pointing at the tall hats and the horse. Phones rose into the air. Pictures were taken from every angle. Many visitors believed the guard could not hear them or see them. They thought he was just part of the show, but the guard saw everything. He watched reflections in windows. He noticed shadows moving across the ground. He listened to the sound of footsteps, not just close ones, but those that changed speed or direction suddenly. His training had taught him that danger rarely arrived loudly. It often slipped in quietly, hiding inside normal moments. The horse shifted its weight slightly. This was normal. Horses were living beings, not machines. Still, the guard noticed. He felt the small change through the reins and the ground beneath his boots. He remained still, but his awareness sharpened. The crowd grew thicker. A group of tourists stepped closer than the marked line. A guard across the way called out a short warning, his voice firm but controlled. The group laughed nervously and stepped back. The mood stayed light. Near the front, a family stood together. A man adjusted his camera. A woman looked around, smiling. A young child stood between them, holding something small in their hand. At first, it seemed harmless. The guard noticed the child because children were unpredictable. They moved suddenly. They did not always understand rules or danger. The child slipped their hand free and stepped forward. The guard did not move. He could not react unless the situation demanded it. He watched carefully. The horse lifted its head slightly. Its ears turned. Horses sense things before humans sometimes. The guard felt a quiet warning inside his chest. The child took another step. A parent noticed and reached out, but the child was quicker. The crowd laughed softly, thinking it was cute. Someone nearby whispered, "Don't worry, the guard won't move." The guard remained still, but his focus narrowed. The distance between the child and the horse was shrinking. Horses were calm when trained, but they were also large, powerful animals. One wrong movement could cause fear. Fear could cause sudden motion. The horse breathed out loudly. The guard felt the reins tighten just a little, not enough to be a problem yet, but enough to matter. He adjusted his grip without anyone noticing. His face stayed expressionless. The child dropped the small object. It rolled across the stone ground, making a sharp clicking sound. The sound echoed louder than expected. The horse flinched. Time slowed. The guard felt the horse tense beneath him. He knew this feeling. It was the moment before a reaction. He had seconds, maybe less. He could not shout without cause. He could not move without reason. Everything he did had to be correct. The parents rushed forward now, fear replacing smiles. People nearby stepped back. The quiet excitement of tourists shifted into confusion. Phones kept recording. Few understood how quickly things could turn dangerous. The guard assessed everything at once. The child's position, the horse's posture, the space around them. The training manuals had warned about moments like this. A wrong decision could cause injury. A delayed decision could be worse. The horse stamped once hard. That sound cut through the air. The guard knew then that this was no longer a small issue. This was no longer something that could be ignored. He needed support, and he needed it fast. He could not handle this alone without increasing risk. Without changing his expression, without making a scene, he pressed the emergency buzzer. Once, twice, 3 times. The action was subtle, almost invisible to the crowd, but the signal traveled instantly. Nearby guards received it through training and system alerts. It meant one thing only: real concern. The guard stayed calm. His body remained controlled. The horse shifted again, but the guard spoke softly, low enough that only the horse could hear. The words were not commands. They were reassurance. Across the parade, another guard turned his head slightly. An officer near the building straightened. The response had begun, quiet and fast. The parents finally reached the child and pulled them back. The child began to cry, confused by the sudden change in mood. The small object lay forgotten on the ground. The horse settled a little, but not fully. The guard stayed alert. Just because danger had moved away did not mean it was gone. Crowds could react poorly when fear spread. Someone could rush forward, someone could trip. More guards approached in controlled steps. They did not run. They did not shout. Their calm helped slow the situation. Officers gently guided people back, using firm hands and quiet words. Most tourists only now realized something serious had almost happened. Some stopped recording. Others lowered their phones slowly. The laughter was gone. Within moments, the space around the guard was clear. The horse relaxed fully at last, lowering its head. The guard felt the tension ease through the reins. His breathing remained steady. His heart rate slowly returned to normal. He stayed in position, as trained as if nothing had occurred. To the crowd, it looked like a brief interruption. To the guard, it was the reason he trained every day. Soon, the officers signaled that everything was under control. The family was spoken to gently. The child was safe. No one was hurt. The guard did not look around for approval. He did not expect praise. He had done his duty. That was enough. The crowd began to settle again. People whispered with new respect. Some pointed and spoke quietly about how fast things had changed. Others simply watched in silence. The guard stood tall, eyes forward, face calm. The morning continued, but it was no longer ordinary. For those who understood what they had seen, it was a reminder. The stillness of the king's guard was not emptiness. It was focus. It was readiness. It was protection standing quietly in plain sight. And though no announcement was made, and no story was told aloud, the guard knew one truth deeply. Sometimes, the most important moments happen in silence, and the bravest actions are the ones most people never notice. After the space around the guard cleared, the parade ground slowly returned to its usual rhythm. Tourists stepped back into loose lines, speaking in hushed voices now. Some looked embarrassed. Others looked thoughtful, as if they had just realized something important about the place they were visiting. The officers moved calmly, guiding people with gentle gestures and quiet words. Nothing dramatic followed, but the feeling in the air had changed. The guard remained in position. His boots did not move. His shoulders stayed square. His face showed no sign of what had just happened. To anyone watching closely, he looked the same as before. Only he knew how close the moment had come to turning into something far worse. Inside, his thoughts stayed sharp. Training did not end when danger passed. This was the phase where mistakes often happened, when people relaxed too quickly. He continued to scan the area with small movements of his eyes, watching hands, feet, and expressions. Calm situations could turn again without warning. The horse beside him lowered its head and breathed slowly. The guard felt relief but did not allow it to soften his focus. He murmured quietly once more, steady and low, the way he had been taught. The horse responded, muscles loosening, weight settling evenly. They were a team, built on trust and repetition. Nearby, an officer spoke briefly into a radio. The words were short and controlled. Another officer nodded and stepped toward the edge of the crowd. They were checking details now, making sure nothing else was wrong. The emergency signal had not been ignored. It never was. A few tourists whispered to each other, trying to guess what had happened. Some thought it was about the horse. Others thought someone had broken a rule. No one truly knew, and no one needed to. The system worked best when curiosity stayed outside the process. The family with the child stood farther back now. The parents looked shaken, holding the child close. An officer spoke to them gently, not blaming, not judging, just explaining. The child listened quietly, eyes wide, clutching a parent's coat. Fear had replaced excitement, but safety had replaced danger. The guard did not look at them. He did not need to. He trusted the others to handle that part. His role was clear: stay ready, stay steady. Minutes passed. The parade ground filled again, but with more space this time. People respected the boundaries more carefully. The painted lines on the ground were no longer ignored. Even the loudest visitors lowered their voices slightly, as if the stones beneath their feet had absorbed the tension and were still holding it. A group of schoolchildren arrived with a guide. The guide spoke in a calm voice, pointing out details of the uniforms, the history, the discipline. The children watched the guard with new seriousness. One raised a hand but then lowered it again, choosing silence. The guard noticed everything. He saw how one man kept adjusting a bag strap too often. He noted how another visitor stood still for too long, eyes scanning instead of admiring. Most of these details meant nothing, but some meant everything. His job was not to guess. His job was to observe. Across the parade, another guard shifted slightly, a signal so small most people would miss it. It meant acknowledgement. It meant awareness. The earlier emergency had sharpened everyone's senses. The guard felt the weight of his helmet, the pressure of the uniform against his shoulders. These were not burdens. They were reminders. Each piece had a purpose. Each rule existed because someone, somewhere, had learned a hard lesson. He thought briefly of his training days. Long hours standing still, endless corrections, learning to control breath, posture, and reaction, learning to read situations without reacting too soon. Many people believed the hardest part was not moving. They were wrong. The hardest part was deciding when to move. Another horse further down the line stamped once. Its rider adjusted calmly. No panic followed. The system absorbed the moment and returned to balance. A light breeze moved through the parade ground. Flags shifted gently. The sound of distant traffic mixed with footsteps and quiet voices. Life continued. An officer approached from behind, stopping at a respectful distance. He did not speak directly to the guard, but his presence was felt. This was part of the process too, silent confirmation. Shared understanding. Everything was under control. Still, the guard remained alert. He noticed a woman kneeling to tie her shoe close to the line. He watched as she stood and stepped back properly. He noticed a man lifting a child onto his shoulders and gently guiding them away from the front. Small changes, all positive. The earlier tension had taught the crowd without words. Time moved forward, slow and steady. The sun climbed higher, warming the stones beneath the guard's boots. Sweat formed lightly at the back of his neck, but he did not react. Comfort was not part of the duty. Awareness was. Inside his mind, he reviewed the moment again. The sound on the ground, the horse's reaction. The child's distance, the timing of the buzzer, everything had aligned correctly. That mattered. Mistakes were studied later. Successes were acknowledged silently. He felt pride, but it was quiet and controlled. Pride was not shown on duty. It lived inside, where it could strengthen resolve without becoming distraction. The crowd changed again as some people left and others arrived. New faces, new movements, new patterns. The guard adjusted his focus smoothly, like turning a lens. Far above, a bird crossed the sky. Its shadow passed briefly over the ground. The guard noticed it, then let it go. Not every movement mattered. Knowing the difference was the skill. Another hour passed without incident. The officers remained nearby, relaxed but ready. The horses stood calmly. The guards held their positions with unwavering discipline. To most people, it was just another day at Horse Guards. To the guard, it was proof of why the duty existed. The emergency signal had not been dramatic. It had not been loud. It had simply worked. That was the goal. Protect without spectacle. Respond without fear. Stand ready so others could feel safe without knowing why. As the crowd continued to watch, the guard stood firm, eyes forward, body still, mind active. The moment had passed, but the responsibility never did. And as the day moved on, one truth remained steady, just like the guard himself. Silence was not weakness. Silence was control. The response that followed the emergency signal did not end when the crowd settled. For the guards and officers, it moved into a quieter phase that was just as important. The visible danger had passed, but the unseen work continued. The guard stayed exactly where he was. His posture did not change. His eyes stayed forward. Still, his awareness widened again, taking in the full space instead of the single moment. He knew that after any sudden event, people behaved differently. Some became nervous. Some became careless. Some tried to get closer, hoping to see something exciting. He would not allow that. Behind the scenes, communication flowed smoothly. Officers exchanged short updates through radios, using calm voices and clear words. No one raised their tone. No one rushed. The system was designed to work without panic, and it was doing exactly that. The guard felt the horse beside him fully settle now. Its breathing was slow and steady. The earlier tension was gone. He rewarded it with quiet reassurance, barely a sound, more a feeling than a command. The bond between them had been built over years. In moments like this, that bond mattered more than strength. Across the parade ground, a senior officer took a careful walk along the edge of the crowd. He was not looking for trouble. He was looking for calm. His presence alone sent a message. Everything was being watched. Everything was under control. Some tourists noticed the extra officers and began to whisper again. A few speculated about what might have happened. Others searched online, hoping to find answers in videos or posts. None of that concerned the guard. His role was not to explain. His role was to protect. A young man stepped forward slightly, holding a phone out. An officer met him gently, guiding him back with a small shake of the head. The young man nodded and stepped away, understanding without argument. The guard appreciated moments like that. Cooperation made everything easier. Time passed in measured steps. The sounds of the city returned fully now. Distant engines, footsteps, the soft rustle of clothing. Life moved forward again, unaware of how close it had come to a different outcome. Inside his mind, the guard replayed the signal sequence. 3 presses, correct spacing, no hesitation. That mattered. The emergency system was simple by design, but it required judgment. Too soon caused confusion. Too late caused harm. He had pressed it at exactly the right moment. That thought did not make him relax. It made him more focused. Confidence could never become comfort. Another guard nearby adjusted his stance slightly, a planned movement to reduce strain. The guard noticed and logged it mentally. Team awareness worked both ways. Everyone watched everyone else. An officer returned to the original guard's position, stopping just behind the line of sight. He did not speak, but the guard sensed the quiet approval. It was not praise, it was confirmation. The kind that mattered. The crowd shifted again as a new group arrived. These visitors had not seen the earlier moment. They laughed louder. They stood closer. They treated the scene like entertainment. The guard adjusted his focus instantly. He studied their movements, their spacing, their reactions to the horses. One woman waved her hand near the horse's face while smiling for a picture. The horse flicked an ear but stayed calm. The guard remained still but ready. An officer stepped in quickly and politely, guiding her hand away and explaining the boundary. She apologized, embarrassed, and stepped back. The situation ended cleanly. This was how it worked. prevention before reaction. The sun climbed higher, casting stronger light across the stone ground. Shadows shortened. Heat built slowly beneath the uniforms. Sweat gathered unnoticed by the guard. His breathing stayed even. His stance remained perfect. He thought briefly of why he had chosen this role. Not for attention, not for admiration, for structure, for purpose. For moments when calm action mattered more than words. Another quiet update came through the system. Everything was normal. No further concerns. Still, the guard stayed alert. A child pointed at the horse and tugged at a parent's sleeve. The parent shook their head gently and guided the child back. The earlier incident had taught many people something without a single announcement being made. Respect had returned. The guard felt a sense of balance settle over the parade ground. Not boredom, balance. The kind that came when everyone understood their place. He scanned the windows again, the corners, the open spaces. He checked reflections, patterns, timing, all clear. Minutes stretched into longer moments. The guard's muscles remained firm but relaxed, trained to hold without locking. His mind stayed active without racing. This was the discipline outsiders rarely understood. A visitor nearby whispered, "They really don't move, do they?" Another replied quietly, "They move when it matters." The guard heard nothing, but if he had, he would have agreed. An officer approached the family from earlier once more, ensuring they were calm and comfortable before allowing them to rejoin the wider crowd. The parents nodded gratefully. The child held tightly to a parent's hand now, eyes cautious instead of curious. Safety had been restored. The guard felt no need to mark the moment. It was enough to know it had passed correctly. As the day continued, the parade ground remained peaceful. No alarms, no signals, just steady watchfulness. The guard remained at his post, unchanged to the eye, fully engaged beneath the surface. What had happened would not make headlines. It would not become a story told loudly. It would be logged, reviewed, and learned from quietly. That was the way it should be. Because the true strength of the King's Guard was not in spectacle or sound. It was in control, timing, and calm judgment. And as long as the guard stood there, silent and steady, that strength would remain exactly where it belonged, between danger and everyone else. As the afternoon moved forward, the parade ground settled into a calm that felt deeper than before. It was not the careless calm of people unaware, but the steady calm that followed quiet control. The earlier moment had shaped the mood. Visitors stood a little farther back. Voices stayed softer. Movements were slower and more thoughtful. The guard remained in position just as he had all day. His posture stayed firm. His eyes remained forward. Yet inside, his attention adjusted with every small change around him. Duty did not fade with time. It sharpened. The horse beside him stood relaxed now, weight evenly balanced, breathing slow and steady. The guard felt the warmth through the reins and the ground beneath his boots. He trusted the horse, and the horse trusted him. That trust had been tested earlier and had held strong. Officers nearby continued their quiet watch. One stood near the edge of the crowd, another closer to the building. They spoke rarely, and when they did, it was brief and calm. There was no need for constant movement. Presence alone was enough. New visitors arrived, unaware of what had happened earlier. They looked around with excitement, lifting phones, smiling, pointing. The guard observed them carefully, reading posture and pace. Most were harmless, simply curious. A few needed gentle guidance, which the officers provided quickly and politely. A man stepped forward slightly, trying to get a closer photo. Before he crossed the line, an officer raised a hand. The man nodded and stepped back without complaint. The system worked best when respect flowed both ways. The guard felt the sun warming the side of his face now. Light reflected off the stone ground, making the air shimmer slightly. Sweat gathered under his uniform, but he did not shift. Comfort was not part of the role. Stability was. Inside his mind, he reviewed the day again, not with pride but with clarity. The decision to press the emergency signal had been correct. The timing had been right. The response had been smooth. That mattered. Quiet success was the goal. Another guard farther down the line adjusted his grip and then returned to stillness. The guard noticed and logged it mentally. They all watched each other, not out of doubt but out of shared responsibility. A group of elderly visitors passed slowly along the edge of the parade ground. One of them paused, looking at the guard with thoughtful eyes. She did not raise a camera. She did not speak. She simply nodded once, as if she understood something others did not. The guard did not react, but something inside him settled more firmly. Moments like that reminded him why the role mattered. The city sounds beyond the parade ground blended into a steady background. Traffic moved. Voices echoed faintly. Life continued. Inside the guarded space, order remained strong. An officer approached quietly from behind and paused just out of view of the crowd. He did not speak, but his presence carried meaning. The guard knew this was part of the process. A silent check. A shared understanding that everything remained secure. After a moment, the officer stepped away. The crowd shifted again as some visitors left and others took their place. A school group arrived, guided by a teacher who spoke softly about history and respect. The children listened closely. One child asked why the guards did not smile. The teacher answered carefully, explaining duty and focus. The guard remained still, but inside he approved of the explanation. A breeze passed through the parade ground, lifting dust lightly from the stones. Flags moved gently. The horse flicked its tail once and then settled again. The guard adjusted his grip slightly, a movement so small it went unnoticed. Everything was normal. And yet the guard knew that normal was never guaranteed. That was why he stayed ready. He watched a pair of tourists arguing quietly near the edge of the space. Their voices grew tense. An officer approached calmly, listening for a moment, then guiding them away to resolve the issue elsewhere. The tension faded as quickly as it had appeared. Prevention worked best when it was gentle. The guard felt time slow, stretching into long, steady moments. His muscles remained engaged but relaxed, trained to hold without strain. His breathing stayed even. His focus remained wide but sharp. This was the part of duty most people never considered, not the emergency, not the signal. But the hours after, when attention had to stay high even though nothing seemed to be happening. A bird landed briefly on a nearby ledge, tilting its head as if studying the scene. The guard noticed it, then dismissed it. Not every movement required action. Another hour passed. The light shifted again, shadows lengthening slightly as the sun moved across the sky. The parade ground looked almost peaceful enough to forget that risk ever existed. Almost. The guard did not forget. He thought briefly of the public's view of his role. Many believed the guard was there for tradition, for ceremony, for display. Few understood the constant judgment happening behind still eyes. He preferred it that way. An officer checked the boundary markers once more, ensuring they were clearly visible. The guard noticed visitors respecting them without being told. That small change meant a lot. The earlier incident had shaped behavior without drama. The guard felt a deep sense of responsibility settle inside him again. Not heavy, not overwhelming, just steady. This was where he belonged. As the afternoon continued, nothing else demanded urgent action. No signals, no raised voices, no sudden movements, and that was the success. The guard remained standing, silent and alert, ready for whatever might come next, even if nothing did. Because his duty was not about reacting to danger alone. It was about standing so firmly, so calmly, that danger often chose not to come at all. As the day slowly moved toward evening, the parade ground carried a quieter energy. The crowds thinned as some visitors drifted away, tired but satisfied. Others stayed, enjoying the calm atmosphere and the sense of history that filled the air. The stones beneath everyone's feet seemed to hold the memory of the day, even if no one spoke about it. The guard remained at his post, just as steady as he had been since morning. His posture did not change. His face showed no emotion. To anyone watching, he looked unchanged by time or events. Yet inside, his awareness adjusted once more, easing slightly but never leaving its core. The horse beside him stood peacefully now, head low, muscles relaxed. It had done its duty just like the guard. The earlier tension was gone, replaced by a deep sense of calm that only came after trust had been proven. The guard felt that calm through the reins and the ground, a quiet reward for discipline. Officers nearby began to rotate gently, one stepping away as another took position. These changes were smooth and careful, designed to keep everything balanced. There was no rush, no loud signals. The system worked best when it moved like this, unseen and unforced. A few visitors lingered near the edge of the parade ground, watching in silence. Some no longer raised phones. Some simply stood and observed as if they felt the weight of the place more clearly now. The guard noticed this shift and accepted it without reaction. The sun lowered slowly, softening the light. Shadows stretched longer across the stones. The air cooled just enough to be felt beneath the uniform. The guard did not move, but he noticed everything. He reflected quietly on the day, not as a story but as a series of choices: awareness, timing, control. The emergency signal had been one choice among many, and it had mattered. But so had every moment before and after it. This was the truth of his duty. Not one dramatic act, but hundreds of small, careful decisions made without anyone noticing. An officer approached from behind again, stopping at a respectful distance. This time he spoke softly, just a few words, meant only for the guard. The words were simple: acknowledgement, confirmation that everything had been handled correctly. Nothing more was needed. The guard did not respond with words. He did not turn, he did not nod. His stillness was his answer. The officer stepped away. The parade ground felt almost peaceful now, like a deep breath after a long day. Visitors came and went. The sounds of the city softened as evening approached. Somewhere in the distance, bells rang faintly, marking the passing hour. The guard remained focused. A family walked by slowly, the parents guiding their children carefully, reminding them to keep distance. One child looked up at the guard with wide eyes, not excited but thoughtful. The child did not wave, did not shout, just watched quietly. The guard stayed still, but inside he felt the weight of responsibility settle into something steady and familiar. This was why the duty mattered, not because people feared the guard, but because they trusted him. As the sky darkened slightly, the atmosphere shifted again. Evening visitors tended to be calmer, less rushed. The parade ground became a place of reflection rather than excitement. The guard adjusted his focus to match the change, watching slower movements and quieter interactions. The horse shifted its stance once, then settled again. The guard adjusted his grip smoothly. They moved together without effort, guided by long practice and mutual trust. Another guard down the line prepared for a shift change, movements precise and practiced. The guard noticed, marking the time without checking a clock. His sense of timing was part of his training. Soon, the day's duty would end for him. But until that moment arrived, nothing changed. An officer checked the area one last time, scanning the edges, the corners, the spaces people often ignored. Everything was in order. The parade ground was secure. The guard felt no relief at this. Relief was not part of the role. Responsibility was. As the light faded further, lamps around the parade ground began to glow softly. Their warm light reflected off polished metal and stone, creating a calm, almost timeless scene. The guard stood within it, a steady figure in a changing world. Most of the visitors had no idea what had happened earlier that day, and that was fine. The purpose of the duty was not to be remembered for danger, but to prevent it from becoming a memory at all. The guard's shift finally came to its close. Another guard approached to replace him, movements exact, expression serious. The transition was quiet, respectful, and smooth. The guard stepped away from his position with controlled movements, careful not to draw attention. To the crowd, it looked like a simple change. To him, it marked the end of a long, focused watch. As he walked away, his posture relaxed just slightly, enough to ease the strain of hours spent standing still. His mind, however, remained alert, replaying the day not for praise but for learning. Behind him, the parade ground continued as it always had. Guards stood watch. Horses remained calm. Visitors watched in quiet respect. The guard knew that tomorrow would bring another day, another crowd, another set of unknown moments. He would return, ready again. Because the duty of the king's guard did not end with one shift or one signal. It lived in discipline, in silence, and in the quiet strength to act when needed and stand still when not. And as the evening settled over Horse Guard's parade, one truth remained clear, even if it was never spoken. Safety had been preserved. Not through noise or force, but through calm judgment, steady presence, and a guard who understood that the most important actions are often the ones no one ever sees.